those are great. So you're not, dropping way down, and
I want one of those now.
Make it a little simpler.
I'm lazy, I guess.
There may be grab bars in the shower, or we may install some grab bars on the bathtub to kind of sit and be able to get in the bathtub safely. So our staff will go look at the house and then make recommendation for what's, what do we need to do before the patient goes home. And so we do that too. Not on everybody, but
but when needed.
When needed, we will.
Yeah. And that does, kind of open a little bit to the idea of we are really blessed in the time that we live in, because 20, 30 years ago, we just didn't have access to all of these services and all these options, which is part of the reason I need to bring this information to people, because at one point all you had is a nursing home.
Right.
You didn't have all these great options. Now you have, besides what you need on the medical side, you have assisted living and home care and home health care and different types of assisted living, and you have retirement communities and, all these different things, which is really wonderful. But what we're seeing is that it's still going back to the home, because what the government is finding is, I could have told them this. They didn't ask me.
They should have called you.
They should have called. Tracy, we need your opinion.
Problem. What do you think?
But people want to be at home.
Yes.
Right. AARP reports year after year after year consistently that 90 to 95% of seniors want to stay at their home. I tell people, even when I go on vacation to a place I really love, after a couple weeks, 9 days is about my max, I'm ready to go home.
Right. Yep.
It's just true. And so when people can come home, that's great. And so what has happened is there has been more adaptive equipment than ever, and not just equipment, but I have a gal who puts in beautiful like handrails, but they look like a wooden, really beautiful piece of kind of art on the wall, but it's actually a handrail. There's so many neat things nowadays. You can have microwaves that come up to your level. If you're in a wheelchair, you can have that whole kitchen or bathroom adapted. There's a local builder in town that does aging in place. I might need to connect you with him. That would be another good to talk to people.
Right.
Yeah, because there's so many ways that you can modify your home. And what we found out recently, it's so important, and the government's really starting to understand this, to get the highest level of care for the least amount of cost. It's non-medical home care. You need all these other things, and I'm not saying that just for us. I'm saying it because that is the trend of where our industry is going, and why places are, wanting to get people back into their home. It's what people want. They can get one-on-one care, even if it's a nurse coming in. It's one-on-one for maybe a half hour or an hour, or a physical therapist. One-on-one high level of services in their home. And so Medicare is going to start paying for personal services for the first time ever.
Wonderful.
That they are going to pay for this. I don't know all the details yet, but it was announced in February and then confirmed in April of this year, and it's supposed to start in 2019. I don't know the details yet. Of course, I'm very interested, because it opens up for so many people the ability to be able to stay in their home, and then folks like myself and Michelle will have to work out how do we coordinate that care and how do we make that work. But that is where the trend is going. So partnering with folks that can come out into your home and help you learn what you need in that home, so that you don't end up back there. As much as we like you, we don't want you to have to come back unnecessarily.
Right. Nobody wants to be in the hospital.
Right.
Right. Like you're saying, they want to be home, and that. If Medicare will pay for those services, that's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Because that's some of the reason when we're seeing people talking about a discharge plan, when patients are ready to leave our facility, family members, sometimes people do need supervision or something at home, and families are working, and so the patient can't go home.
Right.
They have to go on to nursing home, or
and sometimes it's just so unnecessary.
They just can't go back to their house because there's nobody there to check in on them or meal prep, or whereas if that's paid for by Medicare, that would be helpful, because a lot of these services are cash only, and some people don't have the financial resources to pay for that.
It's going to open up for so many people
to be able to go home, and that's what people
very
do
exciting.
They want to go home because after they've been in hospital and then they come to rehab, it maybe is a 3-4 weeks that they haven't been home,
Right.
or more, depending on, you know, how long they were in, you know, one of the other hospitals. So, you know, they want to go home.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. We
Right.
all are ready to go home after vacation. Or
We
whatever.
are, and
Yeah.
that was like under a good circumstance,
Right.
you
You
know,
weren't in
not even
hospital, you were
having
on a
a
nice
hip
vacation
replaced.
somewhere.
Yeah. One of the things, and I'll say this and we can kind of start wrapping up here, but I want to make sure we touch on everything about this rehab, or at least to build enough curiosity, I guess, in folks that they would call Michelle, her group at Lafayette Rehab, and find out a little bit more about them if we missed anything, or tour, because it's so state of the art. It's so cool. I feel like it's
We're
like
very blessed. It's,
like a gym,
it's
like a
very
really
pretty.
neat. I want to play when I go in
It's
there.
very
It's like
nice.
just amazing how that place is set up. It's just so state of the art. It's so cool. It's the latest and the greatest and the best, and I just love it. It's really neat. But one of the things that, you know, really clicked with me several years ago was in home care. Is we had a client and they were in the hospital, and when they are in the hospital, if they're one of our clients, we will go and we'll help them manage their home and, you know, check on their house or make sure their basement's not flooding or feed their cat, whatever they need, get them pajamas, take it over to the hospital. We kind of act as the family in that situation. But when this gentleman came home from the hospital, I went over to see him, and I realized he had taken it, and this is just, this is one example, but this happens all the time. He had taken his discharge plans, which had 2 or 3 appointments that he needed to go to, probably physical therapist and maybe back to the doctor, you know, these important appointments, so that he doesn't miss them. He had new medications that he needed to get. So his medications were not picked up from the pharmacy.
Yeah.
We weren't coordinating his care at the time. Now that's a service that we offer as well. But he needed medications picked up from the pharmacy. I think we did provide his transportation home. We will do that for people as well. But then he went and had a bowl of cereal and some coffee, if I remember right. He set it on top of the discharge paperwork. Then the next thing is the newspaper that he read, and then the mail that he got. That stuff was buried. Do you think he ever made it back to that appointment? He didn't.
No.
He had poor vision. He had poor hearing. He was alone in his house. And had it not been for an outside company coming in and saying, you know, hey, Mr. Smith, I'm making up that name. Hey, Mr. Smith, looks like we have some discharge paperwork here. We got to make sure you get back to these appointments, and we have to get your meds picked up. Who's doing that?
Right.
That's the biggest thing, and that's why people are going back into the hospital, or they're having situations that are completely unnecessary in so many, because they just need some really simple help at home, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be anything extensive.
Right.
And the number one thing we see people going into the hospital for is a UTI, and